In this week's episode of YouTube Art School, I'll show you how to draw clothing folds like a boss. Specifically, we'll go over the 7 types of folds, what those are, and how to draw them to make sure your characters look as good as they possibly can. The best way to learn how to draw folds is, of course, to use references like these, drawing what you see, but a lot of experienced artists eventually start drawing folds from imagination. So how do they do it? If we look at this, it might seem pretty chaotic. Like, what's going on here? But there's actually a lot more structure than you would think at first glance. Look at all these types of folds. And once you know every type, once you learn to spot all those different patterns and understand how they form, it'll get infinitely easier to draw fold from imagination. So let's get started. They're arranged in order of how common they are, or like rather how common they are in drawings, because you'll see the first type is everywhere. It's called the pipe or chord fold. You'll find this type whenever there's one or more tension points. So one very obvious example would be when you have the knee or the elbow pushing against the fabric. All of those folds radiating from that tension point would be considered pipe or chord folds because they kind of look like chords, like long cylinder shapes. You'll also find them between tension points like in this example, traveling from one to the other. And when I talk about tension points, I'm really talking about any force pulling or holding the fabric, except like for gravity. When we wear a t-shirt, for example, like in a neutral pose, usually the shoulders will act as the tension points, the points that are holding the fabric from falling to the floor. In the case of women, the bust will act as another point of tension, pushing against the fabric. So again, pipe folds usually radiate from tension points, with the chord shapes never really parallel to each other, always diverging instead. Those are pipe folds. And that's just the first of 7 though. So here's the second most common type of fold, called a zigzag fold. These will happen often, but only in very specific situations. The requirements are fabrics shaped in a tube. So think of like the legs of pants or long sleeves, right? So when we take cylinders made out of fabric and add some force compressing the shape, we'll always get these zigzag-like patterns. Sometimes you'll find those bunching up at the bottom of legs, at the end of long sleeves, or even when some fabric bunches up behind a bent knee. I think maybe a better name for those would be like diamond folds, just because of the diamond shapes they create in the fabric. Those diamond shapes will be fatter when there's a little bit of compression, but they can look very slim when the fabric is compressed a lot. Now, the third type of fold will seem somewhat similar to the zigzag folds that we just saw. They'll also be noticeable when the fabric wraps around cylindrical forms, but instead of just compressing on itself like the zigzag folds did, the underlying cylindrical form of the arm, the stomach maybe, or the legs is actually what's going to create the folds. So this is a zigzag fold, and this is a spiral fold. See how the arm is pushing against the fabric? In this other case, her abdomen pushing against the fabric is what's creating the folds also. Gravity plays no role here, basically. You just see those folds really often when a piece of clothing is a little too tight, like when you wear a fitted shirt and you roll up your sleeves. But also whenever fabric is twisted in some way to create a spiral shape, hence the name. And I know this is going fast, especially for those that are more like beginner level, but if you'd like more help, like structured help, we go in great depth on the topic of clothing folds in my complete art education program. But that's just one of the many topics that we cover. It's a university equivalent art program that you can do from the comfort of your home, but you still get some of the in-person class vibes with access to our school's private Discord. So check out the link in the description below to learn all about the art school program and join over 29,000 registered students, all taking their art to the next level. And there's no better time to join too, because we just launched a new sale to celebrate reaching past that crazy 29K milestone. Just insane at this point. Just check it out with the link below to know exactly when the sale ends so you don't miss out. It's the same program used by every major game studio in the world, but it's also great for complete beginners with absolutely no experience. There's a reason it's the most popular art program in the world. Alright, I'm done with my shameless plug. Now let's get back to the video. We have 4 more types of folds to check out before you know them all. And the next one, called the Halflock fold, will also be somewhat common. Probably something most characters will feature unless they're standing in like a T-pose. Halflock folds will normally be found when the fabric makes abrupt directional changes. Like if a character is bending their arm or their leg, the fabric will have to, suddenly change direction to follow the limb. And well, the folds created on the side where the fabric gets squished is what we'll call the Halflock folds. These types of folds will usually be pretty bold and angular, like creating these caves of fabrics sandwiched by extra pockets of fabrics on both sides. These ones are pretty interesting because they almost always look the same regardless of the example, so they're really easy to remember and draw from imagination. Just a couple of lines to remember and then you can always draw characters in that same pose. And the point of identifying all of these 7 types of folds, by the way, is it gives you the vast majority of cases that you'll ever need to draw. If you memorize all 7, which isn't really difficult, you should have pretty much all you need to draw folds from imagination. Like now you know that when a leg or an arm is bent, you'll need a Halflock fold there. And on the opposite side, the tension point created by the knee or the elbow, like we saw at the beginning, we also know that we'll need pipe folds radiating from that tension point. And now you just have to match and connect those folds to get really nice results really quickly. Those folds don't look so abstract anymore. There's a clear structure now. So let's take a quick look at the last 3 types of folds because we're almost done. So the 5th type is called the diaper fold. And that's going to be another common one, although it won't appear in too many places, so it should be very easy to remember. It's also the simplest of all folds to understand. I just don't really get the 1940s reference for the name here. Maybe diapers looked like that back then, but essentially a diaper fold will form when a fabric is suspended between 2 fixed points. It's that natural sag that you'll get between the support points, following the curve of gravity. I personally would have called it the croissant fold because of the croissant shapes that it creates between those tension points. But yeah, you'll find this often around collars or in the back between shoulders when the fabric is a little loose. You just want to keep in mind, as with any of the folds really, that tension is what gives definition to those folds. That's why they'll always be very pronounced close to the tension points, and then they'll fade as the tension diminishes. So for diaper folds as well, the fold will be deep and frequent, towards the top, but they'll grow wider and farther apart as they get away from those tension points. Now, the 6th type, another one that you'll have seen often, but now you'll be able to attach a name to, is the drop fold or the flying fold. Those are also quite simple because they'll always have a single point of tension holding them against gravity or the elements like a gust of wind. The most boring but most straightforward example, I guess, would be curtains, where you would get a bunch of tension points holding them up and then a smooth, unimpeded descent following gravity. Capes would fall under that category too, where you'd have a tension point around both shoulders and then the fabric is just left to hang freely. Actually, capes will often feature the last 2 types of fold that we just saw. Diaper folds for the couple of folds, going between the shoulders, and then drop folds for the rest, like those long tubes of fabric. And now the last type of fold that you actually don't need to remember because you'll rarely need to draw it. And when the time comes, it's unlike all the patterns that we've had a look at so far. Actually, there's no patterns to be found here this time. It's called inert folds. It's when you have a piece of fabric just laying on the surface. Think like a wet towel on the floor of your bathroom, all crumpled. It's the most difficult thing to draw because of the lack of predictable structure. It's mostly chaos, so there's really nothing to remember here. Instead, just find a reference when you need to draw something like that and copy it. So really, there's only 6 types of fold to remember: pipe folds, zigzag folds, spiral folds, half-lock folds, diaper folds, and drop folds. And the key to drawing any fold is understanding where the tension points are and how gravity affects the fabric's weight and drape. So if you just start with those basic types, you should be able to handle most fabric situations in your drawings and eventually being able to draw folds from imagination in any situation. And that's gonna wrap it up for this week's class. So hopefully you got something out of this. And if you did, make sure to pay the class fee of either 1 like or 1 sub. And while you wait for next week's class, I think you'll enjoy my class where I painted my original character with a lot of tasty fabric folds, fully shaded in my painterly style. I also go over the entire process, so have a look. I'll have it up on the screen in a second. I'll see you there.